After writing 2 transformational books myself and supporting many other beings to do the same, I've become enthralled by the deep and mysterious magic that's activated when we choose to say yes to ourselves and commit to the book writing journey. Of course, we want to inspire change and new perspectives in our readers, but the transformation that happens as an author, both throughout the writing process and by actually releasing your book into the world, is surprisingly potent. I know I've been blindsided in the most disruptive and delicious ways by some of the changes my books have brought into my life. Writing a book is like casting a spell. Although we can never be completely sure what's going to be unleashed during the process, we choose to do it anyway. This Unbound one is a heroic journey. Each book has the potential to be a magical portal, a doorway to a new world, both for you and your reader. Each book has a very specific medicine that it's here to share with us. And each book gives us the opportunity to alchemize the magnificent imperfection of our experience into gold. The truth is that anyone can write a book. We could all get a few thousand words down and put them together. But what fascinates me is what happens when we allow the book writing process to go deeper. When we say, fuck it, get naked and dive way down beneath the surface. Letting go of the shoulds and any need to be acceptable, sensible, or approved of. What fascinates me is what happens when we make ourselves fully available to being transformed by the very act of writing a book. This is Unbound Writing, and this is the process we'll be exploring together here in the Unbound Writers Club. I'm Nicola, author and founder of the Unbound Press, and I help magical beings to write the transformational book they're really here to write at this time. I'm your guide here in the Unbound Writers Club, and the aim of this podcast is to help you to feel supported, encouraged, activated as you embark on your book writing journey. Whether you're a first-time author or have many books out in the world, my hope is that you will find something here to inspire you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. Today I am joined by the wonderful Victoria Margaux Nielsen, whose first book, Find Your Way Home, Moving Through Miscarriage, Poems and Practices to Reclaim Your Light After Loss, is out now. So when a routine OB appointment brought tragic news in 2018, Victoria was left shocked, shaken and cleaved in two. Instead of letting it make her feel small, she used this sacred loss as a catalyst to expand, to blossom, and to give herself the love she always deserved. Find Your Way Home really takes you through Victoria's journey of choosing joy, connecting with her intuition, and honoring her inner child after miscarriage. So you and the reader can do the same. This is such a beautiful book, and I was really excited to talk to Victoria about how she felt called to write Find Your Way Home and what the writing process and the publishing process was actually like for her, because Victoria is someone who is, her background is in journalism. Very different kind of writing from, what this book is. So we dive into all of that good stuff during this conversation. I am sure you're going to take a lot from it. Victoria is such a light in the world. So yeah, let me introduce you to her now. So Victoria, welcome to the Unbound Writers Club.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It feels so official, even though I've been part of the club for a little bit. I'm just so grateful to be here.
You have, and I kind of feel like you've been on the podcast before, although you haven't, so it's a bit strange. But I always begin with the same question, which is, what does it mean to you to be an unbound writer?
Oh, gosh. To let my spirit soar, to use the page to reveal parts of myself to me that maybe have been buried or stigmatized or shamed, and to set them free in a really beautiful way that helps others. The writing process is very therapeutic for me, but I have come to find that in writing and in sharing that writing, that there are threads of truth that resonate with others, and that connection and community that comes from the sharing is really special and something that I want to continue to do more of, because I think for a long time I thought of myself as, a quote unquote writer. I went to journalism school, like, it had to be facts, it had to be written this certain way. And over these last couple of years, and especially in the process of writing this book, I think I've unwound some of that I learned, right? That put these rules around writing that don't have to be true. And that's been really beautiful. And now I see the written page as this friend again that I had kind of forgotten along the way. So it's been a beautiful coming home. And funny enough, the book Find Your Way Home.
Exactly.
I was like, I didn't even mean that. That worked out nicely.
Oh, well, thanks for that. You've kind of led very nicely into Find Your Way Home. I love what you say there about the page being your friend again. That feels so, so powerful. And, I'm interested to talk a bit more about maybe some of those rules that you've unwound from. But before we dive into that, I would love to hear a little bit more about Find Your Way Home and, what inspired you, what called you to write this particular book.
So, Find Your Way Home, Moving Through Miscarriage, Poems and Prompts to Reclaim Your Light After Loss, really has an energy all its own. After my miscarriage in 2018, I started just writing almost daily as a form of therapy and as a form of moving through all of the emotions that I was feeling. And I don't think I ever planned to publish it. It was just for me. And then as I went back to read some of just the poems and things that came through after meditation or moving my body, it just felt like it needed to be shared with the world. And I remember reaching out to you and then canceling the session. I was like, no one's going to want to read this book. Like, it's not even a book, right? I was like, no. And then the universe, sent out the call, and you reached back out to me. And as we were talking about just what I hope to accomplish, Find Your Way Home dropped in and my whole body lit up. And I was like, that's what it is. It's about coming back to yourself and maybe a new version of you that you've never even met before. And so then I struggled with, okay, is it just a book of poems? What is it? And you really inspired me and gave me the safe space to say, no, write your story, write what happened to you and let that lead. And then from there, it became really apparent that I wanted to ground the book in the practices that I used. So the beginning is my story and kind of my words of wisdom and the themes around what I went through. The middle is all of the poems and words from my heart that have come over the last 4 or 5 years. And then the end of the book are practices like the Akashic Records and breath work and grounding and really practical things that I use to move through these emotions. And the Akashic Records in particular, for anyone that doesn't know what they are, they're just an energetic frequency that absolutely anybody can access. And learning how to access my own records really was a pivotal point for me in my miscarriage journey, to find that I wasn't alone and that I was supported and guided by the universe. And it opened me up to a totally new way of being in the world. And when I tapped into the energy of the book, it really had this hopeful energy, but also childlike wonder and inner child energy. And I really felt that I was healing my inner child in a deep way, not only through the writing of the book, but through all of the practices that I used throughout my miscarriage, giving myself that love again, because that little girl inside is so innocent. And it was a beautiful reminder that I didn't do anything wrong, that my body was safe and sacred and okay, and that giving myself that love as if I was a little child again was just so profoundly healing that I wanted to bring that to anyone else going through miscarriage, but also any life-changing event really that causes them to really feel like they're being turned inside out.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. That kind of sense of love and of the inner child, actually, as you're talking about that, I can feel how it, like in my experience of the book, it streams through the book. Like it's very, very present. And I love that this was something, you know, it started out as being for you, like your own personal process, and it has become like this gorgeous thing now that gets to go into the world and connect with others who are experiencing like the same thing or something similar. And yeah, I want to talk about your intention for the book. Like what you mentioned about it being hopeful and having this hopeful energy. Like, what is your hope for the book and for those who get to connect with Find Your Way Home?
I really want them to see that whatever they're going through doesn't have to define them. That this horrible, tragic, sad thing, whether it's miscarriage or grief of any kind, does not have to be a label that they carry forever. That they get to choose what comes out of this moment and who comes out of this moment. And I think I struggled a little bit with making the book about miscarriage at first because it doesn't define me anymore. And I honestly don't think about it very often. And then I realized that's why I needed to share it, because I was able to move through it in such a profound way that, gosh, it feels like it happened to a totally different person. And I wanted to guide others through that experience. And I also wanted to show a woman in all of her vulnerability. Some of the poems are so raw and visceral in the way that they feel. And in my life, people haven't always shared that openly. And in doing so, I want people to know it's okay to be messy. It's okay to be sad and glad and happy and 10 different emotions all at once. Like that's the human experience. And so if this book allows anyone to just be more in touch with their own humanity, then that, I mean, goal achieved to me, because that's what I want, is for people to realize that they don't have to be defined by the things that happen to them. They get to choose what defines them. And that also to know that like their emotions and their humanity is beautiful and not something that they should be ashamed of or shy away from.
Yes, 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 yes. I mean, I love that you kind of allowed the book to have that focus on miscarriage and to talk about that. I remember us having a conversation around it. It's like, well, should it, or you know, should it be more open? And I feel it's all the more powerful because of that. And I feel like this is something that probably comes up for a lot of writers, that you know, we've experienced something and maybe we don't feel that connected to it anymore. It's like, well, I've moved through it. So, you know, I'm not sure that I actually want to write about that or focus on that particular experience. But actually, like that's where feels like a bit of a strange word to be using in the circumstance, but like that's where the magic is, like in the mess, you know, and in those painful times that we've experienced to manage to move through. And for me, reading it, even though I haven't had that same experience, it helped me to connect with times when I have experienced like a profound loss or just felt completely lost myself. So it's so, so powerful what you've brought through.
Thank you. I love that. And rereading the book and the editing process, there were definitely times when reading some of the poems where I was like, I didn't write this. Like something moved through me to write this. And you know, that's something else that I think the entire process has shown me, is that when you're open to the universe and co-creating, miracles can occur, and we are just vessels for those miracles. And as much as, yes, I wrote this book, I do feel like it was a beautiful co-creation with the universe that wanted to come through me. And that's not because I'm special or better than anyone else. It just means that I was open to it. And I think that's another, hope I have, is that people can see they can do the same. They can do anything that I have done. I am no better, no different. I'm not on this pedestal by any means. I'll admit to anyone, like, I am not perfect, and that's not what this life is about. It's about being perfectly imperfect. And so I share a lot of that in the book as a hope of inspiring others, that, to your exact point, Nicola, your mess is your message. Yeah. Sometimes that's the thing you're here to share with others, is how you made it through those messy parts of life, because I think there's a lot of stigma around that and a lot of shame. And we should only share the perfectly curated version of ourselves. And that's no fun,
Really not. It's quite boring. I'm not really here for that, Yeah. The Unbound Press, we don't want exactly curated. Nah. Well, let's talk about the actual writing process, because you mentioned at the beginning, you're trained as a journalist, like there's a very certain approach that you were kind of trained to take when it came to writing. And then you were talking just now about like how it feels, like certainly a lot of this book came through you. So two very, very different approaches. So what was it like to navigate that? And what were some of those kind of old rules or patterns that maybe that you had to unwind from?
Yeah. So the poems over the last, 4 years really wrote themselves in the sense that after I would meditate or move my body or do any type of inward practice, they kind of just flowed. And so that part felt really easy and really natural. And then the writing of the story, I hesitated a little bit because the perfectionist in me wanted to get it right. Mm-hmm. And wanted to choose the right words. And, I remember getting very caught up in, the punctuation has to be correct, and, that side of things. And it isn't about that. It's not about it being so perfectly written. And I was going for a walk one day, and the opening line kind of dropped in of the 3 words, "There's no heartbeat," being how it starts. And so once that kind of came through, it was like, okay, I can write this story. And I just kind of word vomited it all onto the page and was a little bit like, okay. And thankfully, with your guidance and my beautiful editor, Jessie, you kept saying to me, there's these themes. And so I kept wanting to take that very literal and be like, well, does each theme need a chapter? Does each theme need, and it was like, no, it doesn't need to be that. Like, just, it'll come to you. You gave me the space to let the book breathe. Mm-hmm. And I think that was something I had to unlearn, because as a journalist writing on deadline, you write a story and it needs to be done quickly and it needs to be done efficiently, and the punctuation has to be correct and it needs to be filed, and then it gets printed, and, voila, it's done and you're on to the next thing. And I kept having to come back to the book and like let it sit and settle and open, and then look at it with fresh eyes, and sit and settle and open and look at it with fresh eyes. And that was a new experience for me, because I hate having to reread stuff.
Me too. I really do.
Like, part of me was like, why is this just not done yet? Like, and so there was moments of that. And thankfully it felt like too, the practices section, again, kind of wrote itself in the sense that these are practices I continue to use every day. But I did struggle a little bit with the Akashic Records section. I got a little like, oh, who am I to share a prayer to open the records? Because the Akashic Records prayer that I used for a long time was passed down to me from my mentor. But then I opened the records and asked and said, is it okay for me to do this? And the records very clearly, said, yes. Again, the words don't matter. It's the emotion behind it. It's the opening of your heart and elevating your consciousness that's going to connect you. It's going to connect anyone. So I really had to let go this, this idea of getting it right, quote unquote, and just letting it be what it is. And I think it's all the more beautiful for that. Even if there were some days I was like, ugh, I don't want to work on the book right now.
Totally get that. Totally get that as well. Oh, something that came through for me really strongly there when you were talking is, I mean, like you say at the beginning of that, the poems came through like very naturally because like you'd been moving your body or doing different practices before, like really like allowing the space for what wanted to come through or creating the space for what wanted to come through. And even when you were talking about like sharing your story and like struggling with that a little bit, it was when you were out for a walk that those three words dropped in. And I feel like it's really powerful to notice this, isn't it? Like what creates the conditions for us to be able to bring through our books and what wants to come. So creating that space feels really, really potent. Which brings me on to my next question, because like, you're someone who probably doesn't have an awful lot of space in their life because you've got children, you had a baby last year.
Yes.
I mean, it's quite amazing that you've managed to do this.
I don't give myself enough credit for that. People always ask, yeah, with two kids and, family, a corporate job, a soul business. And I don't know how I do it some days, but I also know that these things are bigger than me and that I am here to share and spread the word. And it just helping people really lights me up, and seeing how like I'm getting like choked up, like how beautiful life can be when you really open yourself up in this way to the space and to finding who you are and who you want to be. It has just been so life-changing, and I want that for everyone on the planet. I want everyone to feel so freaking good living their lives, because we're not meant to suffer. We're not meant to just go to work and come home and go to sleep until we die. Like that's not what we're here to do. And now that I've awoken, I want everyone else to do the same. So I don't know, time bends maybe, and that's how it magically gets done. I don't pretend to understand.
It just has. It's happened. It's there. And now, find your way home. It's out in the world as we're recording this. It was released a couple of days ago. It's making its way out there. How do you feel?
Amazing. I think the space has been key. I'm noticing that's a theme in my life, that when my mind starts to tell me like I have to do things by a certain time or I have to go, I have to slow down and stop and say that there is no better timing than divine timing. Even if it's frustrating, even if I want to push through it, because even with the book, I had in my head like, oh, the pre-sale has to start on this day. And it didn't, just because we were still working on perfecting the book. And, it just worked out the way that it worked out. Now that it's out in the world, I can't wait to see the life that it takes on its own. And I have to be, like a parent, I guess, in that way, like letting it fly out into the world in its own time and know that it's going to work out exactly as it's meant to. And that no promotional timeline or, thing that I put in place is not that it's not going to matter, but it's all going to work out. That, I am going to continue to talk about the book and share it and do a book tour and all kinds of stuff. And it's okay if that's like 5 months from now or if it's tomorrow. And I think that's just a beautiful lesson for anyone, that it will eventually work out. So all of that to say, I'm really excited. And as we kind of said before we hopped on, like I can believe it, but I can't believe it. But It's insane, but it's a beautiful insanity.
It's a really interesting experience, isn't it? When your book finally gets released, it can feel quite unreal, actually. So, and that's why I feel it's really important to, yeah, again, give yourself some space, and not have a lot of pressure about like what happens around the release. Like you say, just letting the book do what it wants to do and trusting the divine timing of everything. But what feels like I kind of almost don't want to ask this question about what's next. Because we don't, it's not about rushing on to the next thing, but what feels like it's bubbling right now?
There's definitely more books to come. I've been writing a lot more fiction lately, which feels really good. I have a mentor that I worked with that she is trained in gateless writing, where, she'll kind of meditate and share a prompt, and then you have 20 or 25 minutes to write. And then she mirrors back to you, or the group that you're working with mirrors back to you what had strength, beauty, just anything really beautiful about what you've written, so that you can then maybe take that on to the next piece or carry it with you. And interestingly enough, I feel like all the vignettes that I've written are focused on women and are focused on like a very specific point in time where they're dealing with an emotion or working through something, or just kind of really going in depth. And so I keep playing with that maybe there's something there of these little vignettes, but I'm gonna let it have its space, and we'll see. So a book tour, virtual and in person for sure, while I let this next book percolate. But it's coming. That's definitely something that Find Your Way Home has opened, is the floodgate of books to come. This is just the first of many.
Yay! It makes me so happy. It makes me so happy. Oh, Victoria, for those listening who want to find out more about you and your work and find your way home and whatever comes next, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
So they can find more information at spiritmamas.com or on Instagram at spirit.mamas. And I also have a personal site and a personal Instagram, Victoria Margaux Nielsen. So Margaux. We'll have all the most up-to-date information. And I hope anyone listening just feels the hope and feels inspired that they can do anything that they set their mind to, that they don't have to be a writer if they're wanting to write a book. They don't have to be any of the labels that the world has put on them. And I'm here to help them step out of the box and color outside the lines. And I love cheering others on. So please feel free to reach out at any point so that I can celebrate you.
Gorgeous. Oh my goodness. I love that invitation. Thank you so much, Victoria, for being like part of the Unbound family and bringing through this beautiful and powerful book. I'm so excited to see, how like the journey unfolds from this point forward. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yay. Thank you so much, Nicola.